Heroic Reginald here. I really think that tanking hasn't been sufficiently explained in other places, so I'm going to do it. This video should be useful for the majority of players because it's about key concepts and understanding the why behind techniques and positioning and tactics. Specific skill is secondary, but oh wait, I think I forgot something. Here's the fun bit. Bruce Banner was a smart guy. He understood tactics. But just because Bruce was smart didn't mean Hulk was stupid. He just didn't understand tactics. Fists are more than good enough. So what is tanking anyway? Depending on your choice of main tank, off tank, or dive tank, or whatever other tank brand you're currently choosing to play, the exact definition and role will shift a bit. But it's all under one category, so without exhausting every possible role and technique, here are 5 core concepts for tanking: making space, managing attention, creating pressure, peeling, and forcing. Notice how eating damage with my face is definitely not on the list? Your big health pool is a facilitator of tank play, but being a damage soak is the smallest part of your job. Number 1, making space. People will talk about this constantly. You gotta make space as a tank, so your team can make plays. This is what everyone says, but what the heck does that mean? Most people will give you an example of a main tank holding a choke point, or something like that. And this is definitely the least impactful form of tanking. Planting a flag and making it hard to get past you is fine, but it is fundamentally passive. Making space is much more about actively pushing yourself where you don't belong and forcing the enemy to contend with you. Dive tanks excel at this, but even main tanks should be doing it. Let me pitch you a hypothetical using my unpatented MS Paint editing system. I'm sure you've all played this symbiote map tile before. Here's a pretty typical first engagement positioning. Don't worry too much about the heroes I've chosen here, it's just a random game. It's more about the roles they represent. Now, what happens if Venom dives into the back line, our Venom, and goes into the healers in this situation? How is that tanking and how does it benefit the team? How does it make space? Okay, so I've moved all the pieces around to show you what that would look like. Let's talk through this. Venom has dove in on the healers, creating literal physical displacement of the enemy team. Some of the enemy players have just repositioned themselves and some have been kind of knocked around. He's also attracting a ton of attention and splitting enemy concentration, and that's going to matter in the next section, but what we're talking about here is space specifically. His action here has adjusted the space dynamics of the enemy team. Invisible Woman has probably hopped away to get space for herself so she can focus on keeping the other healer alive and throw some damage at the same time. The enemy Venom has to turn around and the DPS are moved and now targeting Venom. Everyone displaces and moves to new, better positions to deal with the invading threat. Meanwhile, my team's Thor has pushed into Thor, and they're engaged in a duel. But the advantage is going to go to the defending Thor because his healers are not engaged in doing too much. Luna Snow can keep an eye on her Venom with hit scan shots from afar, while the defending team's Invisible Woman can actually heal Thor and suck the enemy Thor out of position further with her abilities, thus helping Thor, Wanda, and Sue secure the pick on the enemy Thor. Iron Man here is going to have to be more careful, obviously, but with everyone distracted, he may be able to apply damage to Hela before she realizes what's going on. If not, he should be able to fall back. All this only happens because the friendly Venom, the defending Venom, who ultimately has great dive self-sustain right now, is disrupting the orderly line of enemy battle. He is creating literal space by moving enemies around based on his positioning. By creating the semicircle of enemies around him where the dense block was before, he also exposed numerous flanks and eliminated shared fields of fire for the enemy team. Imagine if instead of Iron Man, there was a Psylocke on the defending team who came in behind Sue to secure an additional kill. Now the defending team not only secures the Thor, but also snipes the healer. The push is at that point dead and the enemy has to full reset with a fighting retreat. This is the most likely outcome, though of course nothing is certain in battle. The point is the enemy has physically been shifted and disrupted. That's making space. Making space creates opportunities for yourself and your entire team to accomplish plays. Number 2, managing attention. Okay, so I mentioned a moment ago how making space in this case with Venom is going along with why he's grabbing attention. Let's be specific. Who do you think is looking where right now and why? Well, the frontline Thor doesn't have a choice but to look forwards at all the problems he now has, but he's got limited healing from 2 very distracted healers. Sue is fundamentally out of position to help him and has to focus on Dagger and can maybe hit Squirrel Girl while she's hitting Venom some. Dagger is literally just focused on herself and Venom right now. Squirrel Girl is either helping with Venom or trying to apply forward DPS along with Hela, who is likely doing one of the two. So the enemy team now has a very unconcentrated attention focus. What about the defending team? While Wanda, Sue, and Thor are free to engage the largely unhealed enemy Thor with their full attention because everyone else on the enemy team is busy, meanwhile, Luna Snow is supporting Venom and Iron Man is hunting for kills. This isn't just some abstract thing here, it's literally impacting the distribution of damage over seconds. Who is targeting what and for how long is a major factor of who kills what. If Hela is too busy looking at Venom to notice the Iron Man flying up and blasting her to death with lasers, that's a free kill that happened not because of her position, because it's really not that much different from before, but because of the disrupted attention of her team. Without going into a big diagram again, main tanks often do the same thing on a payload. They set themselves up right on the objective and walk forwards into the enemy ahead of it, pushing into the enemy formation and making the enemy contend with them, garnering incoming damage which they can then soak with healing or personal shielding, and giving flanking DPS heroes an opportunity to surprise healers or damage dealers while their attention is fixated forwards on this latest line of aggression. A clever main tank or dive tank will be keeping an eye on the position and timing of their flank DPS and try to make pushes to coincide with the emergence of those heroes. Anything that can be done to draw attention away from the backline and towards the front line when such a flanker arrives is going to slow down reaction times and allow a pick on a key enemy that will snowball the whole fight. Number 3, creating pressure. Pressure is the cousin of attention management. Where attention is about being a focus point for the enemy, pressure is about forcing enemies to make bad decisions and expend resources because they're paying attention to themselves. For example, as Doctor Strange, if you are pushing into an enemy line and have good healing behind you and are dumping lots of damage into key enemies, threatening and posturing in such a way as to suggest you're looking for an ultimate, the enemy really has to be wary now, has to keep an eye out for you in your next play. This isn't just about attention, it's about the damage and aggression you're putting on display. This, in a lot of ways, is what being a Vanguard means. It means being the first in and most aggressive so that your DPS can add their firepower to your own and start to dictate the flow of battle as enemies are pushed out of position and forced to contend with new problems. Let me try to concretize it with my previous example. Does Venom have to kill Cloak and Dagger here to deprive the enemy a team of healing? No. She's just too busy dealing with pressure on herself, and thus is nullified for a second or two as an active participant where her kit is the most valuable. If you push up and end up slapping Invisible Woman for enough damage, she's going to jump away to get some passive invisible healing. That's time that she's not healing anyone else. Even if it's only 1 second, that's 1 second of effectively disabling that enemy for their team, and while that's happening, your DPS might get lucky and snag a pick. Number 4, healing. Healing is about protecting your allies. Sometimes your job is not to lead the charge, but to ensure your team's squishy damage dealers and supports aren't overwhelmed by dangerous flanks. This is not complicated as a concept, but it is really, really important. Look at your kill feed. Is your healer getting killed over and over by some sort of dive DPS? Is Psylocke eating your heals? If that's happening, do something about it. If you're the Hulk, you can just turn around when you hear or see them coming and jump on your healer and slap your Gamma Shield, and you will save both healers from that flank attack most cases. Main tanks usually have an easier time with this thanks to holding up big shields and the like, but even as Venom, you could do something like this by just diving on top of the other Venom or Psylocke or Spider-Man or whatever, just to scare them off if you need to. An easy way to know that your team has a flank problem is that you, as the tank, are doing tank stuff and not getting healed. When that happens, it's time to pay attention to other players and see why they're not there. Number 5, forcing. Forcing is probably a term I made up, but look, it's centered around a simple concept from ye olden times. The enemy is in a defensive position, you are attacking. You need to dig them out of that position. You have 2 options. You can besiege them, firing away with poke damage from medium to long range, not committing too many resources, hoping to get that lucky pick that lets you finally push. That's the passive approach. You might finally get a pick, and then you might finally push, or you might end up sitting there from 1648 to 1669 like it's the Siege of Candia. Alternatively, you, being the Vanguard and having paid attention to the available ults on your team, the status of your teammates as alive or dead, and so on, can initiate a frontal assault. It's risky, it can fail, you could all die, but if you're doing it, then it's the oh so appropriately named Vanguard's job to lead the way. Stick yourself where you do not belong and force the conflict to get uncomfortable for everyone and turn into a brawl. You just might win. Okay, with that, I'm done. It's been fun. Thanks so much for visiting. Bye-bye. I would like to take a moment to express my genuine and significant gratitude to Bonehead for becoming my first Oath Taker level member. Your support really does mean a lot to me and has made it so much easier for me to continue to justify the amount of effort I pour into this channel. I would like to provide a special thank you to members Tosh, and Miles Williams Lewis, your atypical support really means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. I'd also like to extend a thank you to the rest of my members, and support helps the channel a lot. If you would like to become a member of this channel, there is a link in the description below and a join button next to the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for visiting. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.